literally the capital of bachelorette parties is in Nashville, and you can go downtown and see the craziest like tractors with hot tubs and
Over the past year or so, I've been making trips to one of my favourite cities in the world, Nashville, Tennessee. It is my goal to move there within the next year. Currently, I live in Edinburgh, Scotland, which, don't get me wrong, is an absolutely beautiful city. I love it here. But in terms of opportunity within the music industry, there's not a whole lot going on over here. On my most recent trip, I decided to take my camera with me and interview a few of the people that I have met over the past year who live and work in Nashville as full-time musicians. The interviews that you'll see in this video are the first that I have ever conducted myself, so there was definitely a learning curve there, but I still wanted to try it, and I always say it's good to throw yourself into the fire sometimes when it comes to trying new things. And anytime you do that, you're of course going to learn from your own mistakes. Now, some of these interviews are much longer than others, and I have cut out some of the material in the longer ones just to ensure that this video wasn't too long, but perhaps in the future I will post the full interviews in the form of a podcast or something of that nature. The first person that I interviewed when I was out there was actually my best friend, Jordan Harvey, who is also from Scotland. He moved to Nashville from Edinburgh over a year and a half ago now, I think, and he has had some incredible things happen to him in the short space of time that he's been living in Nashville. He joined a band called King Calloway, who are signed to Broken Bow Records, and since last summer they have played at the Grand Ole Opry on a number of occasions. They've made an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and they've done all sorts of radio tours and appearances at festivals across the US to promote the launch of their debut album, which comes out on the 4th of October. So I managed to catch some of their acoustic set on the Gibson stage at this year's Summer NAMM show, and afterwards I got to sit down with Jordan and get him to talk to me a bit about how and why he ended up moving to Nashville. Alright folks, I'm here with Jordan Harvey of King Calloway, best friend of 3 years.
3 and a half years, mate.
Jordan asked me to play on his final exam at uni, and that was it. Best of friends ever since then. They just got done playing at the Gibson stand. Jordan, you moved to Nashville a year and a half ago, so give us your thoughts on why Nashville was a place for you as a musician.
Absolutely. So, as you know my father very well, my dad is a massive country music fan. He grew up listening to Johnny Cash, brought me up on Johnny Cash. And it felt like it was the right move. I'd lived in London for years, I'd lived over in Sweden, obviously lived in Edinburgh, studied there. And then Nashville I felt one day was the right place for me to go to with such a love of country music. And I had a couple of opportunities out here. I'd spoken with Garrett Goodwin, who is the drummer from Carrie Underwood. He invited me out here. I also have a really good buddy, Josh Paige, out here, who's a dear friend of mine who actually gave me my first ever job here, playing on Broadway. I played in Tootsie's and all those bars down there. And then I was lucky enough to be here and meet the guys in King Calloway, and the rest is history.
If it all comes together, if it all falls apart, we can get through whatever. So I'll be in the driver's seat, on it, pocket full of gasoline, on it, if you wanna catch those creams.
Jordan mentioned a guy called Josh Paige there. Now, Josh is one of my very good friends, and he is one of the first people that I actually met in Nashville. He runs his own band on Broadway, which is a strip of live music bars in downtown Nashville where literally hundreds of bands play all day, every day of the year. Josh moved to Nashville from LA 5 years ago, and his band now play the top slots at the best bars on Broadway, Thursday through Sunday. I sat down with him to discuss all things related to the Broadway scene, in particular how bands make their money on Broadway, which is very, very different to the system that we have here in the UK when it comes to making money from bar gigs. And in Nashville, part of that involves taking paid song requests from members of the audience, which can be interesting when no one in the band has ever played the song before. So you'll hear Josh talk about that in his interview. Okay, and we're good to go.
So Nashville circuit, and by the way, there's all these bars, and they're shoved really short, and there's multiple levels.
Yeah.
And each
Yeah,
level has a
huge.
band on it, which is crazy. But there's 4 shifts in a day at each bar. So there's, I mean, just in the circuit that I work in with Tootsie's, Rippies, Honky Tonk Central, and Kid Rock's Honky Tonk, there's like 175 bands that are just rolling through those 4
Yeah.
bars. Possibly more now. That's just the last I knew.
Yeah.
So, and that's only 4 bars. There's so many bands. It's crazy.
Oh wait, so 170 in those
There's 170
4 bars.
something bands just in being run around those 4 bars.
Dude, that's crazy. I mean, for me, coming from the UK, a city like Edinburgh, we have like maybe like 3 or 4 bars that are kind of spread out that are somewhat similar to the kind of places you'll find on Broadway, but you know, the money involved in those types of gigs and you know, the opportunity to play often is just, it's not even comparable to what we have here on Broadway. To contrast with how you started now, like you guys are now getting like the top slots on Broadway, like 4 nights a week. Thursday, you play Thursday through Sunday, either 6 to 10 or closing like 10 to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And those are always like, you know, for the most part, they're very packed.
Very busy. I'm pretty grateful. I mean, just the journey of it when we started, you know, playing 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, where nobody was there and playing little side stages or upper floors. You know, there weren't as many people. We could still make good money though, to be honest. But no, it's nothing like where we're at now, where we get to play the roof at Tootsie's or the main floor of Kid Rock's bar, and just huge crowds and very engaged crowds.
Yeah, I definitely find that, like, although they're like bar gigs, it's like people are there to watch a band. It's not like they walk in and there's a band and it's like, it doesn't feel like background music in any way. Because in a place like Kid Rock's as well, with that whole stage setup, it, like, you know, it looks like a rock show.
Oh yeah, feels like a rock show. Yeah, and Kid Rock's bar, the way it's designed, I mean, it feels good, but you're talking like on a busy night, it could be 500 to 600, 700 people just sitting right there. So it literally feels like you're in some huge arena, almost like some small arena or a big auditorium.
Can you talk a bit about how bands make money on Broadway? Because it's so different to what I'm used to back home, the whole tipping system. Yeah,
so Broadway is very different than anywhere else in the country. I mean, typically, like when we started in LA and we were traveling around, or for most bands, typically you go around, the band or the bar just gives you a check at the end of the night and you just split that between the guys. And a big chunk of that goes towards expenses as well. If you're traveling in a van, if you have to bring your own sound gear or gas, food, things like that. The cool thing about Broadway is all those expenses are gone because it's right here where you live, right? And then, so every band goes in and the bars give the bands a small base pay. That ranges from bar to bar. Sometimes it's small, a few bucks a man. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but it's typically, for most bands, it's not that much, just enough to make some cash. And we live primarily off what goes into our tip buckets. However, people know that we work off tips, and so I think the crowd that comes into Nashville find themselves being more generous, knowing that we're working for tips. So we're actually able to make a really good living, especially after you factor out a normal band would have to pay all kinds of travel expenses or things like that. We just don't have it. But yeah, working for tips, it was an odd thing to get used to, walking around a tip bucket through a show, just asking people if they want a tip. And then the other thing that a lot of bands do, which we do all the time, is when there's big crowds, we just announce that the floor is open for requests. So if somebody wants to make a request, we ask for a $20 minimum. And so some nights it's more than others, but for the most part, we end up getting several $20 requests a night. And then there's some songs that cost $100. Freebird, Devil Went Down to Georgia. And so there's always those people that want it. So it was, even though it's being split between 4 or 5 people, and some of the bigger bands have 6, but those tips, they really add up.
Yeah. I mean, I was in watching these guys at Kid Rock's last weekend, and somebody paid $200 to hear the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
So people can be generous on Broadway.
Yeah, you just have to know, you have to have a pretty big repertoire to handle like those requests, or you have to just be willing to try to play things that you don't know too well.
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing, is like, you guys work off of charts, like the Nashville number system, like
Yeah.
for the most part. So like a lot of the times, maybe one or two people in the band don't know the song. Like the drummer will just be like, "Oh, it's like 1-4-5. This is the tempo, blah blah blah. The riff goes like this." Sing them the riff, and then you just kind of have to go.
Yeah. So Jeff and I, we went to Musicians Institute in Hollywood. That's actually like the first thing I did when I moved to LA. And they taught us the Nashville system, and we had to train our ears pretty pretty extensively. So like doing that, we were trying to like learn how to figure out how to play, you know, Led Zeppelin or, you know, funky Earth, Wind and Fire songs like on the fly. Just listen and play back. And so some of the country stuff's a little bit easier just to hear, and then once you know the numbers, you can kind of piece it together. But we call it the bro version. Right. I'm like, I don't really know the song. Maybe sometimes I'll even like, if somebody pays enough, I'll just pop off the side of the stage and listen to half the song.
You're right.
And then like take like the simple chord progression that it is, and we just try skip the bridge, add an extra guitar solo, and make it work. But we tell people too, I'm like, hey, we never played this song before. We don't really know what we're doing, but we're gonna do our best. And then people like find joy in knowing that the band is just winging it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll tip us double just because we tried.
That's amazing.
Which is cool. But we did try to wing it with a Boston song not long ago. Yeah, and there was a bunch of sponsors out to look at us that night. We're like, dude, do you think we can try this? And everybody's like, no, it sounds like a hard song. I was like, let's just go for it. We go for it. We totally bit the dust. Just there's one time where I was like, all right, whoever paid for that, come back up.
Whoever paid that, I'm sorry.
It was just too bad. It was too bad. I mean, when I was playing it, I was sweating while I was doing it because I was so embarrassed at how bad I sounded, and the room was packed.
Oh no.
It was not good. Not good. Honestly, they didn't even come back and take the money back.
Did they not? Oh well.
No, it was good, but it was still embarrassing, you know? It's that moment where you're on stage and you just know you're screwing up and nobody likes it and you don't know why, but the anxiety makes you sweat and then you can't breathe. That happened.
So bands on Broadway really do work hard for their money. Because of the tipping system, there is no guarantee that you're gonna be going home with a decent paycheck at the end of your 4-hour shift. And that's something that wasn't mentioned in that interview there, is the fact that these bands on Broadway, they play for 4 hours straight in bars with zero break. I mean, nothing at all. The band are always playing throughout their 4-hour shift. So if you're a guitar player and you need to go to the bathroom 2 hours in, well, that's tough. Unless your buddy who also plays guitar is in the crowd at the right time and is able to jump in and cover you for a couple of songs, you pretty much just have to be on that stage and you have to tough it out. And a lot of musicians that I have met actually do doubles and triple shifts even sometimes, which is absolutely crazy, playing music for sometimes up to 12 hours straight. That's just madness to me. So I've got a lot of respect for the musicians of Broadway. Now, moving away from the Broadway scene, I then went to visit one of my absolute favourite guitar players who, like my friend Josh, made the move from LA to Nashville a number of years ago. His name is Shawn Tubbs, and I highly recommend that all of you go and check out his YouTube channel because, trust me, his guitar playing is absolutely out of this world. I was able to sit down with Shawn in his home studio and talk about what brought him to Nashville in the first place, as well as the differences between LA and Nashville as places for musicians to live and work in. So what was it that eventually brought you over to Nashville?
Well, it's funny, and some people have actually heard the story, but I was actually not quitting guitar period, but I was actually going to quit doing it for a living because I kind of seen the writing on the wall with how sessions and session pay was dropping off with, you know, especially with Pro Tools being able to record straight to the old television set. had kind of changed things. So I actually moved to Arizona for a brief time because my family has actually been in and out of Arizona, and I moved there to actually do fiber optics with my brother.
Oh.
And that was in 2003. And while I was there, I was winding out of playing guitar for a living and pretty much sold everything. And I got this call from the musical director of Carrie Underwood's band. And they needed a guitar player, and I thought, surely they'll never hire me. I'm just a dude from Arizona as far as they're concerned. And yeah, one thing led to another. Long story short, I had 3 days to learn 22 songs and step into an already existing tour. And that's what brought me to Nashville, and I worked with her for a little over 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what brought me out here. So in my case, you know, there's always, well, what do I do to make it in Nashville? And in my case, I was crazy lucky. And there are things you can do and things you should do, but I never, you know, I'll always say, man, I was the luckiest guy to get the gig I got. It was right place, right time. I knew the right people.
Right. Yeah.
And it was the right kind of panic button situation. They needed somebody fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it worked out really, really well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I've been out here ever since, and yeah, I love Nashville.
Yeah, getting to play for Carrie Underwood's band, that's obviously a great opportunity to have presented to you. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a bit about the amount of opportunity there is in this city, in Nashville, compared to other big music cities in the US like LA?
Well, especially LA compared to Nashville, really the opportunities are the same. The problem with LA is huge. So the possibility of you running into another player or a producer or a musical director or whatever that's going to be is going to be pretty slim. You have to know people that are going to introduce you to people. In Nashville, I mean, you can be at some bar getting a burrito, and Brent Mason's sitting right next to you. Or so from that standpoint, it's funny. Like the running joke for me was always, you know, wow, welcome to Nashville. You're a great guitar player. Who cares? You know what I mean? Because everybody in Nashville plays so well. But at the same time, it's like you can meet people really, really easily. Mm-hmm. And what I love about Nashville over LA, and this is not a jab at LA at all, because I love LA, but people are a little bit more open, because I'm very, very shy by nature. And I found that people were quite a bit more open to conversation and just hanging out in Nashville. So if you did run into somebody, they didn't seem to have some sort of wall up or some sort of game on.
Right.
They didn't care. They're just hanging out, and they'll have a conversation with you and tell you stories. Whereas in LA, seems a little harder to break through if you don't know anybody.
Okay.
And even if you do meet somebody that might be in the industry, it seems a little bit more difficult. But like I said, it's not a slight. This is not a slight. It's just Nashville, and it's a Nashville kind of hospitality anyways.
Right,
know?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I found that myself being here as well. Like, I myself am like a shy person. Mm-hmm. When I first meet someone, it takes me a while to kind of open up.
Yeah.
So I have found that it is quite easy to talk to people that have done, you know, very cool things in their career, and they're not like, oh, well, I've played for this person, so I'm not going to waste my time, you know, speaking to whoever you are.
Yeah, they're not like that at all. I mean, there's a guy out here named Jeff King, who's Reba's guitar player. Mm-hmm. And he is just the sweetest dude you could ever meet. And the last thing he'll do is tell you, you know, well, here's what I've been doing. You know, right. It's like he just wants to hang out and, you know, and once again just tell stories and yeah, it's a very Nashville thing. Like even here, you know, my wife was born and raised in Anaheim, and no one in her family other than her has really left California. Okay. And what we loved is we couldn't walk down just the streets here without being stopped and ending up having a half-hour conversation with a stranger, whether we liked it or not. Mm-hmm. But it was always so enjoyable. People are just so sweet by nature out here.
Yeah. And you kind of answered this already, but I was going to ask if you feel that there is a significant difference in the types of musical opportunities there are in LA compared to Nashville. But well, I was talking about this with Tim Pierce actually, and he said that there's a lot more like film work out in LA, like sitting down and reading a score and playing it perfectly.
Yes, yeah. For me, when I did do some TV, and that's in LA, that's going to be a little bit more apparent, but even then, you know, those cats, there's certain guys that already have that nailed. Mm-hmm. But yes, that would be the difference. You wouldn't do as much TV out here. What you're going to do out here is, because there's so many songwriters, that's where a lot of these session guys really break in, is they get with the songwriters that need proper representation of the song so that they can play the song for said artist or producer. That's where a lot of these guys get in, because it's just a songwriting town. And if anything, you know, it's a mistake I've made. At my age, I look back and really wish I would have been more into composition, more of a songwriter, and gone that route, especially in this town. It's a songwriting town. But yeah, Tim's dead on the money. And there's session work out there for sure. But yeah, out here, you'll do way more demo work per capita, per square inch. Yeah, for sure.
So just to kind of finish up, what are your most memorable career moments in this city? Are there any particular gigs that stand out?
They would all be focused on playing with Carrie, to be honest with you. Getting to work when she would do Crossroads type things where it's, you know, Steven Tyler or Lindsey Buckingham. Getting to work with The Edge was shocking. You know, that was haunting too. So there's things like that. And then, yeah, being overseas too, you know, Glasgow and just being in some of the, you know, I mean, some of those places were just absolutely beautiful. But yeah, the craziest stuff was, is that actually Steve Tyler I'm hearing?
Wow,
in my in-ears? Is that The Edge's tone I'm hearing in beautiful stereo in my ears? And did I just count him in? This is pretty, you know? So things like that, it's like I'm so blessed to have been able to do that. And then, of course, you know, just being on something that big, something that, you know, well done, especially the Storyteller Tour was, that was cool. And then, you know, as far as that out here, it's just everybody's so sweet. You know, every time there's a hang, it's memorable. You know? So, yeah, that's pretty much it, man.
Thanks again to Shawn for taking the time to do that interview. Now, Shawn mentioned there that Nashville is very much a songwriter's town, and that's absolutely true. A lot of songwriters base themselves out of Nashville because it's home to so many publishers and record labels. My good friend Sean Kennedy, who is also from Scotland, he moved to Nashville over a year ago now to pursue a career in songwriting, and so I wanted to get his perspective on the songwriting culture in Music City. I have added in subtitles for this one because we shot outside of Carter Vintage Guitars, which ended up looking really cool but not sounding so great because it was windy that day and the audio just did not turn out great, so apologies for that.
Alright, so Shawn, you moved here from Scotland how long ago?
I moved here, I've been coming to Nashville for 5.5 years, and I moved here full time last April.
Right, and you're a songwriter, so what do you think about the whole culture here of having like writers' rounds so often in the city compared to the scene back home in Scotland?
Back home, there's definitely a scene. It's not like, I would like to say, unfortunately, there's not an industry. There is of some sort, but there's more like a scene back home. And you usually have to drive towards London, or come to where everything is, or hear it. I came here 5.5 years ago, and some friends had moved here and said, come out and try it. And then so I came out and ended up spending just over 2 months, and I went to a couple of small venues in town and just met some people on the spot and started co-writing. Then I came back, I would spend like 2 or 3 times a year kind of thing, and just pretty much writing with strangers that you met that day, or someone passed saying, I think you should write with this person. And sometimes it can be amazing, or sometimes it's just not great, but that's like every session you went to regardless of who you're writing with. But some good things that definitely came from random writes or recommendations that people say you can write with.
And how do you find it culturally being here as opposed to Scotland? There's a big difference.
Huge difference, like especially like coming over here just on trips, just on a holiday visa, just to spend time here is different from moving, packing up like everything. I had to resit my driver's test, which is just the way the life is, culture is different here. We sort your bank account out and everything, but it makes it like a hell of a lot sweeter when you get it all done. And I just started to feel settled. I moved here last April, and then by the time like the new year came around, that's when I actually felt like this. It takes time, even though I've known this place for like on and off for 5 years. It definitely takes time, but it's a good old town, and everyone's in it together, which is a good thing. Everyone supports everyone when they do their songwriting, or they come out to shows to support you, post videos, and I think that's what makes it a beautiful city.
Yeah, I would agree. That's funny that you bring that up, because the last few people that I've interviewed have all said everyone's here to help each other, which is a really good thing, obviously. And just to kind of finish up, do you see yourself staying here for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like as far as I can see right now. Working on a couple of projects. So we've got music coming out in August, and it'll be consecutively running through to next year, and then the next project will carry on through April next year. And then I'm on a visa, so we'll see what happens, and if it maps out that way, then I try to do an extension, and then just keep making music. It's very welcoming here, so yeah, I do see myself here for a little while. Done!
You can find Shawn's social links in the description box beneath this video, and also check out his music on Spotify or Apple Music or iTunes, or, you know, wherever you find music nowadays. I was really glad to get his perspective as a songwriter. Originally this video was just going to be about the guitar players of Nashville, but eventually I decided that it would be a better video to get the perspectives of as many different types of musicians as I could. Speaking of guitar players though, I had the pleasure of spending an afternoon creating some content with Brett Papa and Guthrie Trapp in East Nashville. We filmed some lessons for Brett's YouTube channel, which you should absolutely check out. He's got some great content. I actually think it was through Brett's YouTube channel that I discovered Shawn Tubbs, and I got the chance to meet Brett himself at Winter NAMM back in January of this year. And we've kind of been talking, or we had been talking back and forth for a few months after that, discussing the idea of working together on some content at some point, and eventually we were able to do that on my most recent trip to Nashville. So this interview that you're about to watch with Brett and Guthrie kind of turned into more of a conversation. These guys have known each other for a while now, so they kind of just bounced off each other very naturally, and I really only had to ask them one question, and then they answered all of the questions that I was about to ask after that. So it was great to get so much insight into what it's like to be a guitar player in Nashville from both of these guys. I'm obviously going to assume that it's music that brought you guys here, but was there a specific gig or tour or session, or what was it that brought each of you here?
You go. I came up here for the first time when I was about 15 years old, I think, with a guy that I played with on the Gulf Coast that spent a lot of time here and knew a lot of key people. And he brought me up here to do a couple records with him way before I even thought about moving here. And then I played so much on the Gulf Coast growing up, quit school, played music, I'm a lifer, and I just knew that I got burned out on the Gulf, playing all the beach gigs and beach bars and everything that I could do down there, that I just said, man, there's got to be a change for me. And of course at that age you're ready to move away, and the whole thing that happened, I mean, that all was natural. So I came here when I was about 22, and just the rest is kind of history. I've been very fortunate to never have to, you know, do anything other than playing the guitar to make a living, and it just worked out for me. And I knew a lot of really great people here, and it was just a good solid move. This is the place to be, man. I mean, obviously now Nashville's growing like crazy. So. And the word's out. I mean, people know they can come here and have a nice house and a nice yard from a place like New York or LA. Their kids can go to good schools. And we, you know, Nashville, we lead in publishing, and we've got, you know, incredibly talented musicians, studios, engineers, all, you know, the full gamut of the music industry. You can come to Nashville and take your career as far as you want. I mean, I've been so lucky to work with guys and call guys like Vince Gill and John Oates, my friends, you know, country music and rock and roll Hall of Famers are my buddies that I can call up and go have dinner with and stuff like that. So literally living the dream here in Nashville. Yeah. It's incredible.
I had family out here, and I kind of had a random event with our buddy Greg, who is the owner of XTS Pedals, or Exactone Solutions. He started turning me on to players like Guthrie and all this stuff, and with what I do, it was kind of like, it seemed where all the players have started, you know, kind of converging into one spot. And so for me, it was as simple as coming out for, you know, a week and hanging out at Greg's shop, and I met almost everybody you've ever seen me interview here within a 1 week period. And it just, you know, I hit it off with a lot of people. You know, I went out one night to see a good buddy of mine, Rob McNally, play. He was just a A-list session player for free on a Wednesday night. Guthrie was down at the end of the bar, and it just all kind of snowballed. And so, you know, it's one of those towns where like he's saying, not only are those people always around you, but you can go in on any given night and see world-class music. So for what I do, you know, my whole channel is based on inspiring other people to play guitar. Right? It's unbeatable worldwide. You can't, there's no greater concentration of talent in a small area than, I've never seen any place like it.
And to add to that, you know, for somebody like me that's been here for going on, you know, 20 years basically, it's not a place, even when you're like our friends that are all really good guitar players, talking about guitar, it's not a place where you can get lazy or stagnant.
No.
You gotta keep
On your chops.
You gotta keep it up some
Yeah.
way, you know, because we have guys here that just are some of the greatest living musicians on the planet, and you can go, you know, you can go out and hear those guys nightly, and they become your friends.
Yep.
And it just, you know, it's good. It's a healthy environment.
Yeah.
You know,
It's like a healthy sense of competition too.
it is, and
Yeah.
it keeps you inspired, and
Yeah.
it keeps you kind of, you know, somewhat on your game, if
Yeah.
you will, you know.
Well, and the other, and you know, on my thing by saying this is, everybody here is so unassuming too. Like I walked right up to Guthrie in a bar and introduced myself, and you know, we chatted for 2 hours, and you know, all these other guys, these amazing session guitar players, and everyone's just, it's a friendly place. It's like if you're just nice and treat each other good. I mean, everybody here is super welcoming. I've never had anybody like throw shade at me or anything like that. And it's just been, I've never, you know, in LA, that just doesn't happen like that, you know.
I was just gonna say, you know, growing up in a small town in South Alabama on the Gulf Coast, and moving to a place like LA or New York
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
unfathomable
Right.
to me. You know, and I don't even know what those music scenes are like. I don't
Yeah.
have anything to compare to. All
Yeah.
I know is this small town with a very concentrated,
Yeah.
dense talent pool and some of the greatest guitar players walking the planet. I just know that in a town this size, we're all friends and we see each other on a daily or weekly basis.
Yeah.
And there's only a couple different scenes in Nashville.
Yeah.
We've got like, you know, we've got kind of a country scene, and there's a little jazz scene, and there's some blues cats, and blah blah blah. But we all kind of mingle together in a way. And in LA, I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine
No.
what it's like in a city that big, where you have like a death metal crowd, and then you've got like a rockabilly crowd, and then you've got some session
Right.
guys like.
Pop
Dude,
and
and those guys might not ever even meet each other.
No,
you know,
they don't. A
in
lot of times
Nashville,
they don't.
Nashville, we would all know each other.
Yeah,
You know?
no, it's true. I mean, it's such a small place, and in LA, it's such a fast pace, and it's such a dog eat dog world. But like you're saying, it's far enough apart to where people are very protective of their space, and I think having everybody with such an incredible talent level here, it keeps everybody really humble. You know, because
we try our best.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, that's where Brent moved from, is the LA area in
Right.
California.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
'Cause, you know,
for sure.
We're not just talking randomly about LA. He actually
Yeah.
is from out there. So
Yeah, and there's great people out there too. You know, like Tim Pierce, and there's wonderful people out there too. But it's nothing like here. You know, I could meet, you know, the top 5 session guys in one night here, and I might never see them in LA. You know?
Right.
So it's just it's a happening town, and everybody's here for that purpose. Whether you're in music or just like film or creating, it's a creative mecca, and I think that's what draws people here, is just because of that creative energy, you know. And instead of somebody having a spreadsheet on their laptop, you know, at the coffee shop, it's somebody mixing their record or whatever.
it
Like,
is.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a little crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
Nashville, without the music scene in Nashville, I feel like it would just be another city in the South.
Yeah.
It'd be, and I shouldn't even name any cities, but it would be like a Charlotte or a
Yeah.
Montgomery or Birmingham. You know, where I can say this, I'm from the South. There's not a lot going on in those places.
Yeah.
They have their little niches and stuff, but,
Yeah.
and you'd have fun there for 2 or 3 nights maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not a place you're going to live for 17 years.
Yeah.
And be excited to be here every day. And trust me, I have my ups and downs, and my motivation ebbs and flows like everybody
Right.
in life. But to stay here that long,
Yeah.
and because of the music,
Yeah.
and making a living and pursuing this, and being able to write with people, and I'm talking about writing instrumental music, or whatever you want to do. engineers and going to the great studio and be able to record. It's all here.
Yeah.
And it's at the highest level on the planet.
Yeah.
I and what I was going to add to that was, and what we've seen recently, Nashville's been an incredible town with a lot of history for a long time. But in the past 5 years, it's snowballed to where it's folded a couple times over to where, we're getting we're getting tons of people in the culinary arts, in the film industry, and all these young people that are doing all kinds of stuff. It's really starting to fold multiple times over. It's a great time to be here.
Yeah, so no matter what your creative endeavor, almost there's something here now. Like even in the last 3 years, the amount of buildings and restaurants, and I mean it's just ridiculous. Like I can go out now and it's like you can get world-class food, hear world-class music. There's great creators. I mean, there's just it's. I think to me right now, in all the places I've been that are quote unquote a creative environment, I don't think you can beat Nashville.
You can't beat it. And if you want to go downtown and go to 15 different free honky tonks and see the craziest shit in the world with Bachelorette Party Central, literally the
Bachelorette Party capital of the world.
Literally the capital of Bachelorette parties is in Nashville, and you can go downtown and see the craziest tractors with hot tubs and falling out of the windows and it's just crazy.
People dying on every corner on their scooters.
I went to Edley's for lunch with this friend of mine from Green Hills, and I used to live on 12 South. It's a very trendy neighborhood now, but when I moved to there, it was still kind of shady. And now it's super trendy over there. And
lots of beard wax.
And we're sitting there having lunch at Edley's Barbecue, and literally on a Wednesday, today's Wednesday, right? Wednesday afternoon at 12:30, there's 5 bachelorette parties in there, just sitting in there. You never see that years ago. I mean, it's just gotten crazy. I saw a girl, I was driving down Music Row, going to the bank earlier over there, and these 2 scooters couple was in front of me, and I'm going down Music Row. There's a guy on a scooter here and his girlfriend on a scooter in front. Scooters are the big talk of town now.
They're everywhere.
And they're littering up our streets, and people are dying, and it's fucking chaos, right? So I'm going down Music Row Wednesday afternoon, heading to the bank, and hear this couple on 2 scooters. The girl goes to turn up onto the sidewalk like this, and she just busts right on the sidewalk, man. She's just she busted. She's laying there. I'm like, oh God, here we go, man.
Only in Nashville, baby. Only in Nashville.
Only in Nashville. Exactly.
That's right.
So back in February of this year, I was interviewed by RJ Ronquillo for his YouTube series called Between Two Fenders. And a week before I made my appearance on his show, he interviewed a guy called David Henriksson, who is a guitar player from Sweden that now lives and works in Nashville. So his episode came out the week before mine did, and I remember watching it and thinking, wow, this is really cool and also a bit strange, because in the interview, RJ was asking David about his process of applying for a US work visa and, the entire process of him moving from Sweden to Nashville as a guitar player, which is pretty much exactly what I want to do. I'll be moving from Europe, well, I guess not anymore, but let's say moving from the UK to Nashville. That's what I'll be trying to do. Anyway, David's a great dude, and we hung out quite a lot when I was over there in July, and I managed to film a quick interview with him about his time in Nashville so far, the scene back home in Stockholm, which is where he moved from, and we also talked a bit about the role of the guitar player in a band that's based out of Nashville compared to ones that are based out of London and LA typically. Okay, so David, it's kind of funny how I discovered you. I was on RJ Ronquillo's show Between Two Fenders, and I guess you were on it the week before me, but you're
something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Your episode went out, and I was watching it back home in Scotland, and I thought it was just really bizarre, to hear your story of how you moved to the United States from Sweden. And the process of you going through the visa application and getting the sponsors and stuff like that. That was really cool for me to see, because that's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah, I remember that's what you wrote me when you reached out the first time.
Yeah, I was watching it, messaged you, and I was like, we should link up sometime. So here we are, standing in front of a cool mural. Yeah. One of many in East Nashville.
Yeah, for sure.
So
you've done some pretty cool things since you moved over here. Can you talk a bit about some of your career highlights since you moved to Nashville?
I've been here for 2 years. One of the crazier things was after already 6 weeks landing a gig with kind of 90s music, 90s country music star called Tracy Lawrence. He's had 18 number one hits, sold 14 million albums. Brent has played on a bunch of his albums. And I landed that very early on. Some people, you know, if they ever get a gig on that level, it might take them 6 years after moving to town. So started touring with him early on. I got to play the Grand Ole Opry House the first time within less than 3 months after moving here. And that's, you know, it doesn't really happen. It's so rare, and I'm so, you know, grateful and kind of surprised that that kind of stuff took off so quickly. And last summer I played some country music festivals with him in front of 30,000 people in the crowd, and it's just like stuff that I wouldn't have done back home in Sweden if I would have stayed there, for sure.
Yeah, I think getting to play the Opry is like a bucket list thing for any musician.
Yeah, and some people, it takes them 10 years into being in town, if it ever happens. So, yeah, that was quite insane.
Yeah, I can imagine.
In the best way possible.
Yeah, of course. And what is the scene like in Sweden compared to what we have here?
There's a lot of good guitar players in Stockholm or in Sweden as well, but you can't really go out and see them play every day.
Of course.
Here, the live music scene is very limited. There's a lot of music stuff happening in terms of like songwriters and producers creating music that gets exported and stuff like that, but there's like, I was able to make a living playing guitar back home in Sweden, but that was mainly playing cover bands and teaching. So, you can get artist gigs, but the guitar player won't be the most important guy most of the time. You know, it's more kind of pop-based stuff where the keyboard is very important. Well, over here, most bands has 2 guitar players, maybe 3, sometimes 4 guitar players before they have 1 keyboard player. That's how guitar-centric Nashville is.
Yeah,
and that's why we love it so much.
Of course, that's exactly why I want to get over here myself.
Like, it's guitar town.
It is, and for me, like being from the UK and living in Scotland, the closest place that I could go to get, the closest place that any musician could go to find session work. Find tours and recording gigs and stuff like that. Closest place would be London. And I don't want to live in London because it's super busy, super expensive, and I just don't really care for the music that's coming out of there. I like listening to the music that's coming out of London, but as far as playing it, I don't know. I don't like the idea of being on a pop gig, standing on stage and like playing guitar in a song that doesn't need guitar in it. Does not appeal to me at all.
No. Here we can be allowed to be really guitar players. Not only someone who has some pedals on their board and, you know, they're strumming a chord and it's some kind of cool the-edge program delays, you know, which is super cool, but here you can really, it's not about being shredder and showing off, but you can be a very important part of different projects here by being a great guitar player. That's cool.
So far, I think we've had 6 interviews with Nashville-based musicians, but this next guy is the only person that didn't move there. He's been based in Nashville his entire life. His name is Daniel Donato, and he's a real rising star in the world of country guitar playing. In fact, just guitar playing in general. I've covered his playing style on this channel in the past because he's generally one of my favorite players. His fans include people like John Mayer and Joe Bonamassa. He writes and records his own music and tours all over the US. So here's what Daniel Donato had to say about his hometown.
So, as someone who has grown up in Nashville, you've lived here your whole life. In your experience of touring, is there any other city in the US that you have visited that you feel has a scene that is, you know, comparable to Nashville?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I can't answer like in depth, right? Because I know Nashville so well. Like I get all the clicks of Nashville, and I know how certain parts of the industry work in Nashville, and on a level of artistry, on a level of writers, and level of players, producers. publishers, like each person who has their own unit in the business of music that is Nashville, those circles all behave differently, and there's venues in parts of town that accompany those circles. So I don't know the depth of other cities, but from the outskirts, on the outset, it seems like LA would be awesome. I do know Dallas and Austin have great scenes, especially relatable to country music. Yeah, totally. In Topeka, Kansas.
So what are your thoughts on the sheer amount of opportunity there is here for guitar players in particular, but then also the amount of competition that brings here?
That's good. I love the word competition because I think it's a fair thing. And I meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people who don't like that sense of music. And I think competition applies to any hierarchy involved in any career. I think if you want to get successful at anything, you got to participate in the hierarchy of things, and competition is innate in the processing of all those things. I like it. I think it all boils down to loving the process of what you do. That's something Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about. It's just loving the process of building and getting to meet people and doing what you do. I think there's ample opportunity on times 100 here in Nashville. There are literally hundreds of shows, hundreds of stages with hundreds of people that could potentially lead to great things for you each night. That could be overwhelming for some people, but I don't know any other way. That's kind of all I know.
And for me, like, as a fan of your playing and a fan of your music,
Thank you.
I can see why you've remained in Nashville. It makes sense for you to live here, but do you ever see yourself moving away from here?
I have a dream of being able to build my touring business, much like Joe Bonamassa has, where he can just tour when he wants and he has his fan base. And I'd love to move to a place like Montana or somewhere out there where I can just maybe be the only musician in town. Drive a Tesla. That's my dream.
Okay, so last but certainly not least, I got to catch up with my friend Rhett Shull at this year's Summer NAMM show. Now, Rhett does not live in Nashville, but he and his wife Tilly are considering making the move from Atlanta, which is where they currently stay. Rhett's been on my channel before and I've been on his, so I'm sure that most of you watching this will be familiar with his content, but Rhett is a touring guitar player and he's actually mad enough to create vlogs of his touring experiences when he's on the road. And I highly recommend watching them if you want some insight into what it's actually like to be a touring guitar player. Rhett also has his own podcast called The Backstage Journal, which I recently made an appearance on. We had a good long chat about Nashville, touring, and whiskey. So go and check out his podcast as well. Apologies for the background noise in this one. I know it's quite loud, but we were at the NAMM show, which is a tough environment to film in. I think in the future I'll invest in some mics to better accommodate that type of filming environment. But anyway, here's my conversation with Rhett Shull.
For the past 3.5 years, I've been commuting up to Nashville because I've had a gig based out of here. It's about a 3.5-hour drive, Atlanta to Nashville, so it's doable, but it's getting to be a pain in the butt.
Right. So touring and like gigging commitments are what's drawing you to Nashville.
Yeah. And it's been cool though because I have a lot of friends who've moved up here from Nashville, from Atlanta, like cold. They just move up and try and find a gig, and that's really difficult. Whereas I've had the advantage of having a community built here over the last few years. So I've got a really tight group of friends and players and people that I tour with and work with. So there's a handful of people that are expecting us to move up and kind of get to work. So
yeah, I think it totally makes sense for you because I always see you uploading videos. A lot of your videos are set in Nashville. Yeah. You just did that big gig on Broadway with
Jesse Wilson.
Yeah.
So that was July 4th this year. We played in front of over 100,000 people, which is cool.
Wow.
Yeah. They said by the time we had played our set, it was between 120 and 150 were there, which is cool.
Not bad.
Yeah. And this is such a great town because it's small. Compared to Atlanta, geographically it's small, and so it helps in having a tight-knit community, because even if you live on one side of town away from the other person, you can get anywhere you need to be in 15 or 20 minutes.
For sure, yeah. It's not like London or LA where it's like 3-hour commute
or
to get
Atlanta.
to the same city.
I mean, Atlanta's that way too, man. To get, you know, I've got some friends from Atlanta here right now, and it's like I literally only see them when we're here in Nashville together, because it's such a pain in the butt to get from one side of Atlanta to the other. It's a huge place.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And do you feel like in the US there is any other city that compares to the music scene that Nashville has?
Maybe LA, but LA is different. And I've not worked out of LA a lot, so I can only speak from what I've heard other people say. Whereas LA, I think, is a little bit more like Atlanta, where it's a big city, it's a big market, and it's sort of fragmented. So you have little pockets of music and creativity. Whereas in Nashville, so much of what's going on in this town is music related. Yeah, and you have different subsects of that, right? You've got like the country scene, and then, which I'm not involved in at all. Like I don't play any country or anything, but I'm in sort of the alt rock, you know, alternative, blues rock, kind of Black Keys, Raconteurs, Jack White sort of scene, I guess. Yeah. Which I guess is more like the East Nashville scene. So yeah, maybe LA, but the thing is, man, the industry is based here. You know, a lot of the record labels have their offices here, and booking agencies, the PROs, they're all here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like what you were talking about, the whole country thing and how you're not really involved in that. I think that's like a huge misconception about Nashville. When I talk about Nashville to my friends back home in the UK, they're like, isn't it all just country music? And it's like, and to be honest, I've not really, you know, made the effort to go and explore the other music. Yeah. You know, the other genres that are, you know, prevalent in the city. But I definitely know they exist. Like, even just being in East Nashville is such a different vibe. Yeah. When you get down to
There's everything here, and I've had that too. Like everyone just thinks, oh, Nashville, it's all like, you know, Luke Bryan and whatever. Yeah. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, that is here, but there's also a huge rock scene. There's a really big and growing R&B scene, and there's a jazz scene as well. There's a jazz club here called Rudy's that's like pretty popular. And a lot of the guys that I've played with in the past are jazz players, and so they're like plugged into that thing. And the great thing about this town is like you can literally go out any night of the week and see a live show. You can see 12 live shows every single night of the week. Yeah. And it's somebody different playing, or it's your friends playing, or whatever. And that's, I think, unique to this town. Yeah, for sure. Maybe Austin as well. But
yeah, some people have mentioned Austin to me as well. Yeah, this place is unique for sure.
Yeah. So
if you're a musician, come to Nashville.
Yeah.
At least
everybody else is doing it. So might as well.
Alright, man, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me, man.
So that's the end of the video. If you made it this far, well done and thank you. I want to once again thank all of the wonderful people that made this video possible. I'm gonna have to read their names off a list because my memory is terrible. Jordan Harvey, Josh Paige, Shawn Tubbs, Sean Kennedy, Brett Papa, Guthrie Trapp, David Henriksson, Daniel Donato, and Rhett Shull. Maybe we should all form a band. You can find all of their social media handles in the description box beneath this video. If you enjoyed watching, guys, please give this video a like, share it with anyone that you think might be interested in seeing it, click subscribe and hit the notifications bell to see more content like this in the future. My name is Ross Campbell, and I'll see you in the next one.